Hey there, making sure we are going live as planned. I know if I don't check, it will not go. So let's make sure we show up. And there we go. Awesome. Make sure I'm muted on the other platform. Don't need to listen to myself talk while I'm talking to you all. No one needs to hear that. Hey there, I'm Jason Logston, and this is Makin Bacon, all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. This is our first Facebook Live episode. We have another 20 or 30 podcast episodes out there that you can get at makethatbacon.com/podcast. But I'm excited to come to you live for the first time. So if you're listening, make sure you say hi in the comments. Let us know the name of your blog and where you are from. Today's episode is brought to you by the International Sous Vide Association. The ISVA has its virtual summit coming up in 2 weeks. I'm a co-founder of the ISVA, and if you like sous vide cooking at all, you should check it out. They're also looking for some great bloggers to work as affiliates. They offer commissions of 30% for all ticket sales, which is pretty good for most commissions. And so if you write about sous vide or if you're interested at all, you can check it out for yourself or share it with your fans and see if you can bring in a little bit of affiliate income for you. I know we're always looking forward to checking that out. So thanks to the ISVAs for sponsoring this. And now on to the show. So as bloggers, there is always too much work to get done. So being able to effectively prioritize and maximize our efforts is a huge key to moving our blogs forward. It can feel really overwhelming, though, at times, especially when we're already busy. But today's guest is the perfect person to help us get started moving forward. She is the content creator behind Pip and Ebby, and she's been creating recipes for her food blog for 10 years. During that time, she has made plenty of mistakes, which has given her the tools to help steer other food bloggers on a more successful path. Recently, she has discovered the power of planning, time management, and working more efficiently. She's passionate about sharing her system with fellow business owners. So I can't wait to learn from today's guest, Megan from Pip and Ebby. Megan, welcome to Makin Bacon.
Thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be here, Jason.
I really appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait to dive into learning how to be more productive. Yeah. I think it's something that not only bloggers, but most people in general need. We have a few people saying hi. I think we have a slight delay, so if I talk over you, just keep going, and it's not on purpose, Megan.
Okay. No offense taken.
Good. We have Barb saying hi from Philly. That's my mom. She does all of our administrative assistant work.
Aw.
We have Mike Lashardy. He's with the International Sous Vide Association. So he's from Baltimore. Thanks for joining us, Mike. If anyone else is joining in, make sure to say hi in the comments and where you are from. So Megan, I'm excited to talk about productivity and learning how we can get more out of our blogs and and just everything we do. But one thing I really like to start with is, what is it like around your dinner table on a typical day?
That's a funny question, because being a food blogger, you would think that I had meals planned out and everything perfect, but that is not the case for me. I'm sorry to say. We typically eat in our kitchen, usually together, but in kind of a haphazard way. We just kind of fend for ourselves. I'll make dinner for my boys. And one thing that is consistent is that we do get together for meals, like breakfast and dinner, and make sure that we talk to each other. So I'm probably not the typical food blogger, but that's how we do it.
Shockingly, you are the typical food blogger. Oh. I think one person I've talked to is like, yeah, we have this nice meal that we sit down.
Yeah,
and everyone else is we get together and that's about it.
Yeah.
I think being busy and cooking all day long, we probably get a little less excited to cook dinner at the end. Yeah, burnt out.
Yeah, for sure.
We have Cynthia Rogan says hi from Chi-Town. Thank you for joining us, Cynthia. So where does the name of your blog come from, Megan? Pip and Ebby?
Oh, that's a great question. So I started the blog with a friend, and at the time we were just we have to get out of the grind. So we started it just we didn't really know what our focus was. We thought maybe we would do cooking, maybe dive into some other areas, but we didn't want to tie ourselves to anything right away. So we just said let's do our nicknames. So it was Pip was my nickname and hers was Ebby. And then she really quickly got out of the blogging game, which was totally fine. Like, it just wasn't her thing. But I love the name. I just I fell in love with it right away. There's such a ring to it. And it's kind of a topic of mystery. Like, people are always like, what is a Pip and Ebby? What does that mean? So it's an opportunity for me to talk about my blog. So I've just kind of kept it, and I don't know, I like it.
I like it. It doesn't like shoehorn you into something that you have to, my original blog was cooking sous vide. So it was kind of, once I started expanding, I had to change the name of my blog, which was wasn't great.
Yeah.
Cynthia says, is there a food blogger community online, Facebook to find you? Do you want to talk about some of the ways that if people have more questions for you, they can reach you, Megan?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can always reach out personally. So you can reach out at megan@eatblogtalk.com if you have any specific questions as we go through the chat. You can it's funny that you ask about a food blogger community, because we are actually creating one that is going to be launching on Tuesday, on August 11th. And it's specifically made for food bloggers. And we're focusing on community and connection and getting people that confidence that they need to have clarity in their business. And there's so many cool things about it. So you should check that out too. If you go to eatblogtalk.com, it's like really clear where to go from there, and you can get all the information about it. So, yeah.
And you're doing some AMAs in the community, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to helping with that. Should be exciting. And I can't wait to see all the other things that you have going on there. A lot of people in the industry, so it'd be really neat to see what you put together.
Lots of goodies inside and things that we're not even talking about. So lots of really good stuff.
I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that. But before, let's dive into some of the things that you want to talk about, which is your specialty right now, and something you're really excited about. And I think a big issue for most bloggers, and myself included, is that we have all these things to do and we don't know where we should focus. How do you narrow down what is important and where you should spend your time?
That is such a good question. Like you said, Jason, especially in food blogging, it's like there's so much coming at you. You get into it thinking that it's going to be like, oh, I'm just going to take pictures and make food. And it's not like that. We very quickly learn that it's like so much more than that. There's SEO, and like I could go on and on, as you know, there's like a million pieces of the puzzle. So right away, I think we realize that this is a job that is not just like it's not a very simple job. It gets very overwhelming very quickly. And if we don't figure out how to like sort through it, we can sink. And I think that's why a lot of people exit the game. So 1 year ago, I had just started my podcast for food bloggers, and on top of being a food blogger, so I was suddenly doing like 2 entirely separate jobs at once. And I thought before I started, I was like, this will be fine. I can get this done, no problem. But once I dove in, I realized really quickly that it was like I was way in over my head, and I spent like 2 months treading water. I mean, I was like crying constantly. I was ignoring my children. I was working all the time, just trying to keep these 2 jobs floating, because I really had a passion for both of them. So I knew that I needed to very quickly figure out a method. So last fall, almost a year ago now, I just sat down and I started writing out a plan. Like, okay, I need to figure this out. And I came up with this like magical formula. And I actually turned it into a course, because when I was done, I was like, this is amazing. So I put it into course format, and then I actually followed it myself to see if it would work. And it did. And I love it. So this is what I do. So I start with a vision. So like I think a year into the future, and I think specifically about my business, I start thinking, what do I want in my business and what do I not want in my business? And I just get really specific. And there are ways to do this. Like you can journal, we can go into that later, but you just need to get really clear with yourself about those things, like what you want in your life and what you do not. So I did that, and I just decided that this summer, so a year later, that I did not want to be in the same boat. I wanted to be keeping both of my businesses afloat and actually living a life and being a normal human, and not being sad all the time and overwhelmed. So I just made that a priority. So I decided to take July 2020 off of work. I made that decision a year ago, and I worked backward from there. And I just like set goals, kind of guideposts that would guide my way to that vision in order to make it happen. So that's kind of like generally how it works, but there's so much more to it. I mean, once you find the visions that you want and you make the plans and set the goals, you also have to stay on track. So you've got to like be a really like diligent time manager. You have to like manage your time very well. You have to have a really well kept editorial calendar and a weekly calendar. And then I have some other time management tips that really take you a long way. And then productivity is also something that I've just really like been fascinated by for my whole adult life. Like I always have tried to find ways to be more productive and to squeeze more things in and also stay sane. So I like really dig into productivity as well. So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, that's it. Like create a vision, make a plan, because without a vision, it's impossible to make a plan. Without a plan, it's impossible to know what you're working on or what you need to be working on. And if you don't know what to work on, it's so easy to get overwhelmed, like we talked about, and to just sink because you're spinning your wheels and you're probably working on all those wrong things.
So you said you look a year out, and then
Yep.
are you focusing on things like, a certain amount of page views or a certain amount of income or activities you'd like to be doing? What sort of things are a part of the vision that you have, your 1-year vision?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you can include all of that. I always say for your business specifically, come up with 3 to 5 visions, and they can be general. They can be really generic. Like, I want to have less stress in my life, or they can be really specific. Like I want to have 1 million page views a month, or, like all those things you said would totally apply. So I think like be as specific or general as you want, because when you work backward and make those goals and those plans, you can get more specific with those. But like, if there's a platform you want to grow on, like focus on that. I want to have so many followers on Instagram, or I just want to have like a really engaged audience on Instagram. Like any of that applies.
I like the concept of picturing where you want to go. It's something that I talk about a lot, that, I bring this up at conferences sometimes when I'm speaking, because you go to a conference and you listen to 40 good speakers who are all experts in different things, and you come away thinking, there's no way I can possibly do all that. And it's true, you can't do it all, but they don't all do it themselves either. A lot of like the YouTube expert is rarely an expert in SEO and Instagram. They do one thing and they do it really well.
Yeah.
So I think people need to look at kind of everything out there and say, like, I like your concept of like, this is a direction that I want to go in and I want to get better in. And then once you decide that, it helps kind of eliminate a lot of the things that you can look at and know they're not moving you forward.
Yeah, that's exactly, I always say the same thing. Like focusing on the right things removes garbage from your life. And that goes for your personal life and your business. So if you have a clear vision and you make sure that all of your goals are supporting that vision, then your garbage automatically is eliminated, which is kind of cool, because then you don't have to focus on the garbage. Because a lot of people are like, okay, I want to stop, unnecessary social media scrolling or whatever it might be. And they focus on that problem. But I feel like focusing on the problem isn't productive. If you focus on the right things, that's what makes you productive.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard that before. That's a good concept of kind of focusing on solutions, not on the problems necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. And then you said something too, Jason, about like knowing where you want to go. And that brought up this analogy that I always like to use about a GPS. So like if you type in to your GPS, if you're just like, take me somewhere, it's gonna take you somewhere. You're gonna drive. You're not gonna stop driving, but your path is gonna be like uncertain. You're gonna drive all over the place on these roads that you're not sure where you're going, and you're really never gonna get anywhere. But if you type into your GPS, I want to, let's say, like I want to have a show on the Food Network, then your GPS has a destination for you that's very, very specific. So you might not know what's involved in the roads that are getting you there, but you do know that you're going to get there. So I love that analogy.
And it's so hard to let things go and not feel like you're doing as much as everyone we see out there, whether it's posting, 3 times a day on Instagram or doing Facebook Lives or being on YouTube or, SEO work. There's all these things. And I think knowing where you are makes it easier to be like a blogger, quote unquote, should do this, but I'm not just a generic blogger. I'm trying to get somewhere specifically, and where I want to go, I might not need to do that, and can help mentally, I think, with kind of not doing some of the things that people say that we should do that don't always make a difference.
So true. There's so many parts of it. And I mean, we can touch on the surface of all of those pieces, but really, like, you can't dive into all of it and be really good at all of it and succeed. You're just going to burn out. So that's a really good point. That's again, like, why you should create visions and like know exactly what you want. And then you're very clear on it.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been doing a lot of looking at over the last few months is trying to figure out, what's the minimum I need to do in certain areas, because, having like an Instagram account, having one is important, and posting to it is pretty important. And it's a big benefit over not having one. And if you spend 40 hours a week on Instagram, you're probably going to dominate Instagram and do really good. Yeah. But spending 10 hours a week probably doesn't get you much more than spending 10 minutes a week. At some point, you're adding more and more time, but you're not getting much better until you kind of get over that dip. And then there's a lot of benefits. So I've been trying to see what those minimums are, and that's been helping free up some of my time.
And you can experiment with that too. I mean, like, Instagram isn't my thing. I do it because I have to do it because I'm a food blogger, but I have like less than 3,000 followers, and I've been food blogging for 10 years. So it's just not my thing. But I test with it, and I'll like step away for a period and just kind of see what happens, or like maybe not post a story every day, or not, like put up a few posts a week and just kind of see. So you can test and see what happens. And I don't know, I feel like on any platform, as long as you're growing like over time, that you really don't need to stress about it.
Yep. So how do you have your vision and you kind of know where you want to go? What's an effective way to kind of figure out the steps to get there? I think it's hard to go from, I want to get there, to really figure out how can I do that in a manageable way?
Well, you have to break it down into chunks. So I read this book called The 12-Week Year that I highly recommend. I think the author is Brian Moran. Highly recommend reading that, because that just like cleared everything up for me. So he recommends kind of doing the same thing. Like, I think he likes 3-year visions, but I prefer one just because I like for it to be like real. And then he recommends like breaking it down into 12-week chunks. So that's kind of what I do. I do 3-month chunks. So we can use, let's come up with an example. Like, let's say I want 1 million page views on my blog in a year. So if I work backward, like, obviously I'm going to put a heavy focus on my blog and not, other platforms. So you can like come up with goals that are very tangible and that are attainable within a 3-month period. So then you set those goals. So like from now until 3 months from now, I'm going to, I don't know, like post 3 new recipes a week, and, like other things that support having all of that traffic. So then you just like set that as a plan. And then I have this system with my calendars where I like have very specific things in my editorial calendar. And then I also do a weekly calendar where I like every single week, I like pack my time. Any time that I have free to work, I have something in there that I need to do. And again, like everything has to support that end vision. So does that answer your question? So it's like working backward, creating chunks of time that make sense, that all support that vision. And then also like going backward even more, like into week chunks. So I do like from a year, 3 month, and then from the 3 month, I do like weekly.
Can you talk a little bit about what you have in your editorial calendar versus your weekly calendar?
Yeah, I know everyone does this a little bit differently, but personally, in my editorial calendar, I only have the content that I'm publishing for my food blog. So I currently do 2 new or like refreshed, like I will refresh old content to posts per week. So I have all of that in there for the next handful of months. So I know what's coming up. I can plan ahead and schedule ahead. And then my weekly calendar, I use in Google, it's associated with my email. So if I have like appointments that pop up, it's easy to carry those over. And that's where I put really specific stuff. Like, I don't know, I have to cook a pot roast today, and then I'm going to take photos and edit the photos. So I get really detailed about those specific tasks in my calendar. And then I like to color code. So I color it red as I do them. So it's like in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's done, on to the next day. And then I knock everything out there. But I every day, I look to the next day to see what I have coming up. And I just mentally prepare for it and make sure that all my time is filled, that I don't have enough or I don't have too many tasks on my list. So I plan weekly and then daily too. So I I start really big, but I go all the way back down to every single day I look to the next day.
It's surprisingly, when you do block out all of your time like that, how much more productive you can be, and how much more, at least for me, I could enjoy my free time because I already knew that I got done what I was supposed to get done that day.
Exactly. Yes, that is so true. When I don't do that on the weeks that I just kind of let it go, yeah, I'm not productive. But when you have it staring at you, you just I take that as the word, okay, I am doing this. I have to go do it.
So I know you said you're not an Instagram expert, but I figure we should at least ask the question. The podcast pad asked, any recommendations to set up an Instagram from scratch?
Oh, goodness. I mean, I talk to a lot of people on my podcast about this, so I can just reiterate what they tell me, which is be authentic, engage with people right away. Anytime someone comments or writes you a message, absolutely 100% write back, you personally. Put up really good quality content consistently, be there consistently. And then also stories are so huge for people who are just starting, who want to gain that momentum. So being on stories all the time, and also commenting and engaging on other people's content too. So not only putting up yours and expecting others to go comment on yours, but making sure that you go over to theirs and you give them love too, and really be diligent about that. I'd say to start at least 20 minutes a day and just go in and commit to doing that.
Yep. That's definitely a lot of what I've heard too, is that, you want to engage with the people as much as possible, and you want to get out there and comment on other people's and like other people's as well.
Yep.
So, and they also said for setting it up, I mean, I think in general, especially when you get started, it's good to do everything manually so you get a feel for how everything works. So I think it probably makes sense just, go to, Instagram.com and just create your account there and go in. And then once you get a feel for kind of how everything works and the ebbs and flows of it, then you can always look at, something like Buffer or Tailwind that can help you automate the posting on it.
Yeah. And also when you set up, make sure you have a solid profile that looks somewhat professional. You can add in some personality, but I think that's if you go to someone's profile and there's 3 words, don't you think oh, I don't know, I don't take it very seriously. Have a profile picture that people are going to take seriously. So setting up, I would say just keep those 2 things in mind, and also just quality. Yeah.
So one of the best ways that you can free up more time is, like we kind of talked about, stopping to do stuff, but you can also automate different things or have other people do it. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been using the automate, eliminate, and delegate kind of process to free up time?
Yeah. So basically any task, and okay, so I'll back up. So every so often, I would say once a month, I kind of go through this process of just evaluating all of the things that I do. And I have this really handy business plan that kind of prompted me to do this. And I can tell you guys where to find that, or maybe we can link to it in your, I don't know, somewhere. But
yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So that plan just made me sit down and figure out everything that I do on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And once I started writing it out, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting because my VA is doing that, but maybe she doesn't need to do that anymore. And then like there were a few things that I was doing that I was thinking, well, maybe she could do that. So I would say like try to evaluate on a regular basis all of the tasks that go on within your job and ask those 3 questions. Can I automate this? Can I delegate it? And can I eliminate it? And you'll be surprised at how many things can go for good or that can be automated. And there's this software called, I think it's called, I don't know how to say it, Zapier or Zapier, but it's Zapier. I love the software. It's so amazing. You can automate between basically any software imaginable known to man. So you can do like triggers. Like if someone triggers a board in Trello, that can be sent to an email. I mean, there's like so many things you can do. So if you go into that software, it gives you some ideas. So you have an idea of like what you could possibly do. And then, so that would be the automation piece. And then delegation, if you have a VA or if you don't have a VA, consider taking some of those tasks that maybe you don't necessarily need to do anymore and offloading them. So yeah, I just go through that once a month, and almost every single time there's at least one thing that I can either automate, eliminate, or delegate.
I've started doing that process as well. And it is amazing how much stuff you look at and you're like, I am bringing nothing to this task. Like I am not better at it, or skill doesn't matter, like it's just so interesting to look at that and be like, oh, I can actually free up all this time. And we just posted a link to I don't know how to say it either. Zapier.
I don't know. I know it's like one of those words.
We use that for some of our stuff too, and it is amazing how it can just connect to different processes. We use it that if you sign up for our sous vide quick start course, and if you reply to the first email, that ties in, checks my emails. If you've replied to that email, it puts it in a Google Sheet so I can reference it later. And then it moves you through the autoresponder to send you the next lesson. And it all happens automatically.
Yeah. And then once it starts happening, you realize the power of it and you're like, oh my God. And then your wheels start turning and you think, what else could I do this with? And if you do a little bit of research on Zapier, I don't know, Zapier.
That's what we're calling it. That is the official Makin Bacon pronunciation.
Okay. If you do a little research, I mean, you find all of these things. Like you can automate even traffic logging. So like if you want to log how much traffic you're getting at the first of every month or something like that, and then keep a note of that, you can do that automatically. So it's like behind the scenes doing it. You don't even have to do a thing. It's just kind of back there doing it for you.
It's so helpful. One of the other things I've been doing that I think like ties into automation is figuring out things like my email signature and things that take a little bit longer to like type out, or like canned responses to the questions I get all the time. And I use something called Text Expander now, which with just a few keystrokes, it automatically inserts everything, like my entire email signature. If I do like -- ES, it does the entire email signature. And it's been a big time saver for those types of things that I type constantly. And it just really frees that up, which is nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And what are the type of tasks that you think are ideal to delegate?
Oh, well, anything. I would say if you could answer the question, like, do I need to do this? And if you say no, then consider offloading it. And I know that's not always feasible for everyone because, first of all, not everyone has a VA, but at least that gets you started. Like, what is the one thing that you really don't need to do and that you don't like to do? So start there, and then you could offload that onto a VA, or like if you already have one, just train them on that. So I think those two questions, like what do I not need to do, but also what is that task that you're like, ugh, I really don't want to do this right now.
I think it was Free to Focus, the book that I read recently, and it talks about basically rating everything on, do I like this or do I not like it? And am I great at this or am I not great?
Yeah.
And the things that like you don't like and you're not great at, like that's where you start. If you if you don't add anything to it and you hate
Yeah.
doing it, like those are the
Yeah.
things. And then you can kind of move up the path as you're like, well, I'm good at this, but I don't like doing it. So maybe now I can find someone to do that.
Exactly. Yep. That's a good strategy.
Yeah, my biggest thing was doing the podcast afterwards. You have to re-listen to it and edit it and take out some of the ums and ahs and clean it up. And I would get where I had 4 or 5 podcasts recorded sitting on my computer that I just needed to sit down and do. And I finally found someone to take it off my plate. And it was just like a weight lifted off of me that so nice. And I don't have to listen to myself anymore.
I did the same. That was kind of, I talked earlier about like being in that place where I was doing so much with both of my jobs that I was like, I can't do this anymore. That was the first thing that I took off my plate. And I felt that same weight, Jason. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So, oh yeah, I mean, I love doing the interviews and I love listening to them when they're done, but the editing was not my thing.
Yep. And that was something that would also weigh on me throughout the week, knowing that I had to do it and that it was on my thing. And then it would be dragging me down the entire week. And now I'm more productive the rest of the time as well, which is great.
I feel you 100%.
How did you go about tracking the different tasks that you do? Is there some tips you have because we do so much stuff that we don't even think about?
I know. Yeah, I would just say start writing somewhere. Just start writing and get as specific as you possibly can. So not just like managing Instagram, but creating 3 stories a week, replying to everyone's comments, putting the post up, writing the post, edit, like everything. Just like maybe break it down by platform. So like everything you do for Instagram, everything you do for Facebook, everything you do for blog post creation. And then, it goes on forever, but I mean, we have so much that it's worth doing that because we need to go in and evaluate in order to, like, if you don't have a clear picture of what you're doing, there's no way to make positive changes. So I feel like that's the first step, just absolutely writing everything out in order to really understand what goes into making your business run.
Yeah. One of the things that was really beneficial for us for delegating was, like you're saying, we would take a project and we would write down every single thing, like now we come up with the title of the podcast. Now we come up with the square image, now the wide image. And having that list, it's really hard unless you work very closely with a VA already to be like, I need help with this vaguish thing. But if you know that, like, very specifically, I do these 4 things and like, I need you to do these 4 things. It's very clear and concise and you can communicate that to them very effectively.
Yep. Agreed.
And you also find out some of that stuff that you're like a good example for me is when for each podcast, I send out a email to the people afterwards when it goes live. And I say, here's the Facebook share link. Here's, a Twitter share link. Here's the link to the video. And it probably takes like 20 to 30 minutes to put together every time. And I looked at it and I was like, there's only a handful of things that change here. And once I know the URL, like the Facebook link's created, it's always the same. The Twitter link's the same. Like, so I automated that part of it. I just put in the URL, spits out everything, and then I can paste it in. And it takes like 3 minutes now, which doesn't sound like a lot, but every week.
No, that adds up. I know. And I think that's it. Like finding those things where you're like, doing them consistently and you're like, when you have that feeling like, do I need to be doing this again? This is super annoying. It only takes me 3 minutes, but those 3 minutes happen consistently and they all add up to precious time you could be spending elsewhere. So if you ever find yourself doing that, like, I have to do this again, that is probably a good place to start.
I think the things that are easiest to automate are rarely the ones that bring you the most joy doing because they're pretty brainless stuff that you're just doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly.
So you talked about your editorial calendars. You talk about the importance of being focused. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits that can give you and different ways that maybe you can improve your focus if people are interested in that?
Yeah, I have a few tips for that. So kind of the focus kind of goes along with time management. I don't like a lot of these phrases kind of go hand in hand. But I do have a tip for staying really like laser focused. And that is first to like figure out what you are spending your time on now. So I started doing these time logs where I would log my time for an entire week. And that sounds super tedious and ridiculous. I know, because I thought the same thing. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do this. But I did it. I recorded everything I did, including like driving to pick my boys up from school. And like, I just got used to it after a while. And what that does is it reveals to you so much of the little things that you're doing that you maybe don't need to be doing. So that alone really helped me to focus in on what I was spending time on that I did not need to be spending time on, and what I should be spending time on. So we kind of talked before about how like having visions helps the garbage to go away. The same thing with the time log. Having like focusing on what those things are that you should be spending your time on helps the garbage to go away. It's the same concept. So that was kind of my first step in trying to get more focused on the important things. And it was, I'm telling you, Jason, it was a game changer for not just my business, but for my personal life too. I was like, I never spent time with my husband. And like, I mean, there were all these things I was like, oh my gosh, I would never have known that if I hadn't done the time logs. So that is like a secret little thing that I highly recommend that everybody does, no matter where you're at.
And like you said, it sounds tedious and whatever, but you're doing it for a week so you can free up your time for the rest of your life. It's not like, you have to do it every single day.
Right. It is so worth it. I mean, and if nothing else, do it for 3 days, like 3 or 4 days. If a week sounds too much, do it for a significant amount of time, like a few solid days, because I promise you that there's going to be something in there that's going to bring clarity, and it's going to bring you more focus in your life. Promise.
I think it's shocking how much stuff we don't realize how long it actually takes as well, either on the short end or the long end. But I've been doing some tracking, and I'll finish. I'll be like, that felt like 10 minutes, not 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And other times I'll be like, oh, I've been working for what, like 2 hours? And I look, I'm like, oh, 30 minutes. That felt like a lot longer than that.
No, one of the things that I first found was really interesting. I thought I would have told you before I did my time logging that I didn't get very much sleep and that I worked way more than I did. And what my time log revealed was that I actually sleep quite a bit, and that I don't work as much as I thought I did. I mean, and there was like a 10-hour discrepancy in my mind versus what I was seeing. That's huge. So once you have clarity, you're like, wow, what goes on in my mind is not necessarily real. So that's kind of creepy. But yeah, it is very, very revealing.
And I think if you talk about having these, coming up with a vision of where you want to go and then trying to work around that. If you do that in conjunction with time tracking, you can really look and say like, okay, I worked for 6 or 8 or 10 hours, this day, but of the things that are actually going to get me to where I wanted to go, I put in a half hour because I was busy answering emails or, chatting with, other bloggers, all those things that fill our time that aren't really moving us forward.
And the admin thing too. So I had like the admin category because I just didn't know where to put like answering emails and, all those things that are kind of miscellaneous. So I found when I did my first time log that I had all of these things, like my admin time was off the charts. So I'm like, okay, I need to be a little more clear. So I did it again and just got more specific. Like, okay, now I'm checking emails or I'm sending emails. And then like you kind of hone it as you go. And I do recommend doing like doing multiple time log periods. So like maybe doing one now and then a month from now, and then kind of reassessing and refining too. So I think that can be really beneficial.
I view a lot of this stuff as it's incremental improvements. Like you're not going to spend a week trying to get better and suddenly you've maximized your productivity for the rest of your life. It's just something to keep assessing time and time again to slowly getting better and better.
Yes, it is definitely it is a marathon. It goes on forever. You're constantly refining and figuring out what works and what you need to eliminate, and on and on and on. So, yeah.
We have Justin from Salt Pepper Skillet. If you're interested in his blog, it's amazing. Justin's a great guy. He's in my mastermind group. He wanted to know, what are some tips for blocking
awesome.
days, like writing day, cooking shoot day,
Mm.
and most importantly, which we all have trouble with, sticking to it?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm a huge believer in time blocking, and I live by that. So I try to like put everything together that I possibly can. So if it's like a recipe day, I make as many recipes as I can. I take as many pictures as I can. So I don't know, as far as like, okay, first of all, I'll say to kind of support that, because a lot of people fight that and they just say like, it's not feasible. I can't just do one thing on a day. But think about all of that energy that you spend when you have days when you're like going between different types of tasks. Like if you're photographing for 2 hours and then you have to completely change and you have to write for 2 hours and then completely change again and do like SEO for 2 hours. I mean, that is like so much energy that you're spending unnecessarily to shift gears, because when you get into something, it's so easy to just ride that wave and stick with it. So that is a huge reason why I like blocking, because it preserves my emotional, mental energy and my overall bandwidth. And then as far as like sticking to it,
I would also contribute that real quick.
Yeah.
That I think one of the big things is that as bloggers, a lot of our work is like creative and planning, and our brains are working on it. And so if you are doing, like you said, 4 different things every 2 hours in one day, your brain doesn't have time to really work on the next item. Or if you go, tomorrow is a shooting day, while you're in bed or while you're in the shower, like your brain is going to be trying to figure out different shots, even though they are, you might be doing 4 shoots in one day. It's still that same type of thinking. And so I found, at least for me, my brain tends to come up with a lot better ideas and it goes a lot more smoothly.
No, I like that. The creativity that you can tap into when you're like writing in that same flow is huge. And I mean, for us, when we have all these different things to focus on, it's really hard to get to that, like when you feel really creative and awesome. So if you can ride that wave as much as you can, I say do it. I love batching. I'm a huge proponent. So as far as like sticking to it, kind of what we talked about earlier, which you might have missed, Justin, but just like, I'm really stringent about my weekly calendar. And first of all, I'm really clear what I am going to be doing in the next 3 months. And then I just kind of work backward and like, what do I need to do this week to support what I want done in 3 months? And I figure out exactly the amount of time that I can work. If I have from 9 until 3, then that's what I fill in my calendar. And over time you learn, if you like overextend yourself, you learn to maybe cut it back a little bit, but like just start somewhere and, put 3 hours for cooking and baking. And then you're going to put 2 hours for photo editing, and then just kind of work from there. Every week you're going to learn a little bit and grow and kind of tweak your system. But I say like go aggressive, because if you have a certain block of time, get as much done as you can. You said this earlier, Jason. The more you can do in that certain block of time, then like when you're not working, you can just be like, done. I did everything I needed to do today. You can check out, which is an amazing feeling.
One thing that's helped me is I try to identify the things that generally took me away from it. Like it's pretty easy for me to go like, okay, well, I'm not going to just randomly cook and photograph a meal today, right? Like I do that on days that is planned. So I can stick to doing SEO work if that's the other option. But like checking email or replying to comments, things like that took me out of pretty much whatever I had blocked. And so what I've started to do is I started to schedule that either before or after my blocks.
Yep.
So no, like, okay, email takes me away. So I'm going to do 15 minutes of email before I get started doing a cook and photo shoot for the next 4 hours. And then I have another half hour of email afterwards. So mentally I knew it was coming up, and I wasn't going to get anything in that, 4-hour block that was going to be super important anyway. So I could focus a lot more easily on doing the things that I had blocked out.
I think a huge part of this job is learning to ignore distractions, don't you think? Like, there's so many distractions, like your phone can beep and show you that you have another notification from Facebook, and then Instagram, and then your VA texts you because she needs a photo, whatever. Like, it's on and on. So for me, a huge part of this and being like laser focused and productive is like teaching myself how to just block out those distractions. And like what you said, Jason, where you actually schedule in those distractions. So for me, email has always been a huge distraction. So I had to get to the point where I like block out areas on my calendar that say email, and I don't go into my email unless it's during that time. And it was so hard for me at first. I was like, oh, I wanted it says like 3 new messages, but after a while I was like, no, you can't, because if I do that, then there's like another rabbit hole, and then that leads to another one. So you just have to like really, you have to be so focused and diligent and just have your eye on the prize. Like, remember that vision. Why did you create that vision? Because there's something that you really want. And I think like keeping that in mind can help you to keep those distractions at bay.
For email, one thing that helped me, and I think it was from the book Deep Work, that he says, we check email a lot more than we think that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel like we might be missing something. And so he said, take a journal, that write down the time every time you check it, and write down one of 3 things, whether you got something that was important and you needed right then, whether you got something that you're going to use eventually, or if you got something that was useless. And then look at how often you actually got something that you needed to respond to that
like
second. And I did that for like 3 days, and I was like, now I just feel like an idiot because I never get any email that matters, but I keep checking it all the time.
Very seldom. Yeah. I mean, very seldom do you get an email that you're like, ooh. And even if you did, like, even if the Food Network wrote me an email and said, Megan, you're starting a new show tomorrow, like, I can wait until 4 p.m. on my scheduled email slot on my calendar to check that out. They don't need to hear from me immediately. So it's kind of ridiculous the amount of time I spend checking my email. And I'm finally self-aware, I think, but for so long I was like, not just on desktop, but on my phone. Yeah. I was like opening my phone for no reason and looking at my email. I'm like, why? What am I looking for? Exactly. So it was a process for me, though. It's not something you can just like be done with. I had to kind of work through that. It was like an addiction almost, email addiction.
As my partner in the ISVA says, hey, my emails matter. Of course
I'm sure they do, Mike.
Yours were the only ones that were important. One of the best things that happened to me is our dog deciding that beeping noises terrify him for some unknown reason. So we've had to turn off every audible alert on all of our devices.
Well, that's good.
It's so nice. Like, we never get interrupted in conversation. I never get interrupted from work because things are pinging. Like, it's actually been really, really helpful that I'm focusing on what I want to focus on, not what my phone is telling me to focus on.
Thank you to your dog. I mean, it's nice when outside influences make us step away from those distractions. So go dog.
You've also talked about the importance of saying no. Can you talk a little bit about that? Something a lot of us have trouble with.
So that was such a huge lesson for me. It took me forever to learn this, but I don't know. I mean, as entrepreneurs, I feel like people not knowingly take advantage, but kind of unknowingly do sometimes, because we work from home and they're like, well, since you're working from home, do you want to meet for coffee? And let's go out for lunch. And hey, would you mind picking this up for me? Or like, I just felt like family and friends were always asking me for those things. And not to say that you shouldn't do that once in a while, because I do make time once in a while for lunch dates and fun outings with friends and family. But I just had to kind of put a stop to it, because my time is valuable, and it's just as valuable as if I worked in an office. And I think that not everybody sees that. So I just had to like establish really like concrete walls around my work and treat it like a real business. And once I started doing that, then other people started respecting my time as well. So in the past few years, I've said no a lot. And I think I've turned a lot of people off, like, oh, we used to go out for lunch all the time. Like, I'm sorry, I just can't. Like, my time is so precious, and I'm done at work. I make sure I'm done working by 5 o'clock every night. So I don't work evenings anymore. So my daytime work is ridiculously precious to me. So I just have to, like, I always say, like, building walls around it, like a fortress, like putting just really secure, heavy duty walls around myself and my work time, and just being really firm about that. I'm a huge believer in saying no.
And it helps, like, if you schedule your weeks like you're talking about, because
Yeah.
you can decide how often you want to go out for lunch. It could
Yeah.
be 3 times a week, but if you
Yeah.
know it's only 3 times a week and you get 5 requests, you're going to go to the 3 probably that you want to go to the most, and you'll probably have a better time, and you'll still get all your work done and have that blend that you want.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, saying no means just like really being really secure about your schedule. And if you want to go out 3 times, that's great. But then you say no all the other times.
One of the best tips I heard for saying no, because I say yes to a lot of things in the future because it sounds like it'd be fun then. They said pretend like you're answering it about like that afternoon, that it's not
I like
some
that.
unambiguous time. It's like if they asked you about this right now and you had
Would
to
you
like
do it
drop what you're
now?
doing. Yep.
Yeah, I like that. That's
And a
a
lot of
good one.
times the answer is no.
Yeah. Yes.
Mike says that's solid advice. Saying no is one of the hardest things for him, but it's made a huge impact.
It's hard because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and you want to like continue friendships and relationships, and you don't want anyone to be like, oh, she doesn't like me anymore, or I don't know. It's really hard to do that. But once you start doing it, you see such power in it, I think. And then you just want to do it more.
And it feels like a selfish thing that you're saying no to what someone else wants. But none of us really are working only for ourselves. We have families or friends or
That's
readers.
true.
Like none of us are in this bubble. And so it's by saying yes to other people, you're saying no to other people as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you said,
Yep.
you weren't seeing your husband as much. And like that's
Yeah.
partially because you're saying yes to other things. So it might not have been do you want to hang out with me? And you're like, no, we're married. I don't want to.
Right.
But that's the end result. We only have so much time.
I like that perspective. That's like giving you permission to say no and to not feel like you're being selfish. Like saying no means that I can be with my family tonight, and that means a lot to me. So if you look at it like that and kind of twist it around, it feels less selfish and you feel a little more inclined to do it, I think.
Yep. You're going to let somebody down, so you might as well let down the people you care less about.
That's right.
I have a few more questions coming up for Megan, but if you have any more comments or questions, drop them in the comments and we will ask them away. I'll handle a few more, but we've had great questions so far from the audience. So this has been fun having some more input on how the interview is going.
Yeah.
You talk about having a morning routine. Can you talk about the importance of morning routines and how they can kind of center you for the day?
Yeah, this goes along with what I was talking about earlier, just with having that like a mental energy or capacity. If you have a morning routine, I've found, so I've had one for a few years now, and it's just opened up all this space for me. So I do like the same thing every weekday morning, like a robot, and that seems really boring and dull, but I don't have to spend any time the entire rest of my day worrying about those things. For example, like working out. If I work out in the morning, then I'm not like fretting for hours about, oh, I need to work out today. I didn't do it this morning. I really need to squeeze it in, but I have this work to do. When am I going to do that? So you can basically take all of that worry and get rid of it. And you can use that energy to create more and to be a more productive person and to be a more present parent or whatever it is. So I'm such a huge believer in establishing a morning routine. And you don't have to like start big if you don't have one. I recommend just starting really small and like maybe getting up 5 minutes earlier and writing in your journal, or what are those things that you want to squeeze in that you don't, and just starting really small with it.
And people are such creatures of habit that we get in that our bodies and brains just start to get in these ruts and keep doing the exact same thing. And if you purposely craft that to be something that you want and something that's going to help get your day started, your brain just starts to be like, oh, okay, I wake up and now I have some coffee and I work out and now I'm going to sit down and work because that's what we do all the time.
Yeah. And also taking vacations too. So I've noticed since I started a solid morning routine, you would think like before I did that, when I would come back from a vacation, I'd be like, I don't want to work out. And it would take me so long to get back into those things that I should be doing. But establishing a routine is like just embedding this habit into your soul. So if you do even take a really long vacation, you come back and it's like no problem at all getting back into it. It's just like, I don't know if you have read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, but love that book. I am such a fan of his. And I just think there's such power in creating habits. I mean, there are so many benefits to it.
Yeah, habits, we don't think about habits nearly as much as we should. We think of like, smoking or
right. The bad ones.
Yeah. There's so many good habits and there's so many things like we were talking about checking our phones and notifications. Things like that we don't think about, and they are habits that we do without thinking about it. And it's the more you can look at the things you're actually doing and craft it in a way that like I'm going to focus on the things that I want to do, not just things that my brain's been like, oh, well, I should do this because whatever,
Yep. Totally agree. There's such power in habits. And if you're not on James Clear's email list, oh my gosh, I love that email. Like he sends it out every Friday and literally every time I'm like, yes, 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 amen. Like it's like the best email list I've ever been subscribed to. I love it.
I'll have to check that out for sure. So there's a lot of power in habits. It's amazing.
There is, truly.
Well, Megan, I appreciate you coming on so much.
This was so fun. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I loved this.
And if anyone listening is interested in getting more from Megan, you can check out her podcast. It's great. I've been on there. It was a joy being on that. And that's Eat Blog Talk. She has a new community site coming out soon, so you can check out that. Make sure you sign up and get on the mailing list. Go to your blog as well. Pip and Ebby. Am I missing any of the other 80 things that you're doing despite paring down your life?
Well, it's kind of like you, Jason. I feel like you have all of these things that you do. I'm like so impressed by you. But yeah, I know. I feel like when you say that, I'm like, I have a lot going on. Wow. Hence the talk about productivity, right? And time management. Because without all of this, I would be crying in the other room.
A lot of us do the exact same amount of work. Some people just focus on the things that are moving them forward, and other people focus on the things that other people are putting in front of them.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, well, it was a pleasure being here. What a fun conversation. Really enjoyed it.
I appreciate you being the inaugural live podcast. That was fun.
Happy to be inaugural. I love it.
So this has been Making Bacon, all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. Until next time, I'm Jason Logston. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Really appreciate it.